Got a miniaturized and pretty bad-looking version of Polemonium viscosum, which is very, very common in Colorado amongst the rocks above tree line. Probably look at a better one at some point, I would say. It's what, one or two half-open flowers. The rest of it kind of dries out like this. Kind of looks dried out like this, rather. Nonetheless, if you touch this plant, touch those little leaflet whorls, smells quite wonderful, quite sticky, quite skunky, quite distinct, quite pungent. The reason I didn't do this last night is because I wanted to see what plants are growing up here. I'm probably first and foremost an alpine botanist after all, so definitely keen on seeing what's blooming out here to the extent that that word is occurring. Northern Nevada appears to be a dud this season in terms of blooms, in contrast to the super blooms of the south earlier this year. Gonna have to go way north, I think, next time to find much. We're still gonna enjoy the snakes for sure while we're here. What I'm doing now is continuing along the Moriah ridgeline. Here it is back there, extending southwards till it becomes of no more use to me. Then I'll drop down to this drainage, which will empty out that low valley. When the Great Basin was wetter in the Pleistocene, those lower barren flats, mostly sand, mostly alkali, were lakes. So those are the dried out lake beds right there. Very common in the hotter lower valleys across northern Nevada. Some rubus likes rocky washes in the western USA. No raspberries to sample at the moment though. Walked straight into a narrow gorge, and I hope I don't get stuck in it. I hope it's not some precipitous canyon, because otherwise I'm in a little bit of trouble, I'd say. Gorge turned out to be inconsequential, but you never know. I think the worst of the steepness and ruggedness is behind me for the rest of the day, because from now on I'm about to hit a road system and go into the low flatlands to cross to the southern end of the range and hit my first resupply point, which is just outside the boundaries of the national park. It's gonna be a long time till this evening, I'm sure. Just hoping to be there before dark. That's what a little weather station looks like. So that was Mount Moriah, thousands of feet lower by now. Hoping it'll be a lot wetter in the southern half of the mountains, where it seems to me it will be. There's more snow down there. I know just from looking at, lists of species and such, that some circumboreal taxa grow there. Didn't see anything really circumboreal on Mount Moriah because it's simply quite dry up there. Even in a wet year, I'm sure it. Not sure where I was when I got cut off there, but anyway, expecting, based on the fact that they're circumboreal and therefore more wet-loving taxa in the south half of the range, that it'll be wetter there overall, lusher there overall. High hopes, at least. It's been pretty dry in the north half, that's for darn sure. Although there's plenty of waters coming off of Mount Moriah in the forms of perennial streams. There's a nice one just to my right, actually. Just had a little bathlet in. There's a benefit to being a little bit later than you expect sometimes. The benefit for me today is that I'll be crossing the hotter, lower stuff later this afternoon and this eve. I'm sure it's 95 degrees down there right now, whereas it's in the 80s up here probably, maybe even upper 70s. Rather pleasant overall. Got birches and aspens in the wet soils, roses, and junipers and pines in the drier soils, sarcocarpus. There's a streamlet lined with aquilegia, carex, some carrots, roses, willows, aspens up higher. It's a gorgeous walk through some woodland alongside a stream. Rarely do I walk along water for such stretches in Nevada from some miles now. It's a nice accompanying sound. Some bog orchids here. Tiny flowers, so no kind of orchid that most are used to from stores and whatnot. But a ton of them here. Tiny green flowers. Platanthera. Some dense woodlands along this creek, even as it goes lower. The roosts and fruit are probably the brightest thing out here. Mount Moriah's pushing me out for good. Curious when the water and the riparian vegetation will fade out. It's a pretty hot desert down there. Thankfully, it's nearly evening, so I'll be crossing some of that this eve. I need to, because I'll be hungry tonight. I have my cookware at the next resupply point, and I have any food to possibly cook with that cookware. So I've basically forced myself to reach the southern, kind of deep into the southern part of the range tonight. A sarcobatus here is starting to appear up from the lowlands. It's a monotypic family in the sense that there's only one genus, handful of species potentially. Sarcobatus vermiculatus is the common one. Sarcobataceae is thought to be sister to the Caryophyllaceae, the carnations, and relatives, which is fairly enigmatic that such a xeric adapted shrub lineage shared a common ancestor with basically an entirely herbaceous family that doesn't tend to really grow in deserts, although there's plenty of exceptions to that. Those interesting evolutionary riddles could have been extinction along the way, in the sense that they didn't share an immediate common ancestor with one another. That that ancestral Caryophyllaceae and any other potential sister families some of those potential sisters could be extinct. Divergence time, talking is at least dozens of millions of years, I'd say, between this thing and incarnation. So there's a lot of room for extinction of potential more closely sister lineages to the current day carry-offs. Looks more like a chenopode than a carry-off. The chenopodes and the amaranths, of course, are all closely related to the carry-offs as well. Here's the hot-low crossing I've been talking about. A few hours of daylight left, so be nice and cool for me. There's a car up ahead. It's basically the first thing, human or industrialized machinery, that I've seen for 3 days now. So definitely scorched earth down here. Some of the asteraceous shrubs are maybe just starting to begin to bloom for August, but otherwise parched earth. Suddenly footprints. Other people use their legs out here too. It's wonderful. Just met the man in the van. Guy about 66 years of age, he said. Just camping out here and enjoying solitude and wilderness. Hiking around a little bit. Time to go this way. Here's the Moriah complex. There's the path ahead. It's a wheeler right there, standing sentinel over Great Basin National Park. Highway's right in front of me. I'll be crossing it in a couple hours in one of those canyons over there, where I'll be picking up my stove and some other supplies. Gotta sneak around the ranch there through the sagebrush and sarcobatus forest. It's an open field with cows ahead though. Have to dash for the highway. It's a big patch of stinging nettle. Just kicked my ass. Fuck. Legs just got decimated by the nettle. Got a monstrous sagebrush right here. One of the biggest ones I've ever seen, probably. And there's the meadow across which I now will make a mad dash. Got past the cow field, unspotted by people. Spotted by the cows for sure. They were raising quite a fuss. Now I'm back in the wildlands and got several miles still across terrain like this to camp. Won't be too bad. The moon will be coming up. 1-2 hours from now, I'll be done. I don't know if they're just trying to be funny or what, but we are well below 8,000 feet here. Probably 7,200. Marmots are alpine creatures. They live way up there. And they hibernate in the winter. It's hard to picture a marmot down here. Headed southwards to the national park now. A fairly good trail system, at least for now. Dense mesic forest in this canyon. It's pinyon juniper on the dried out slopes around here still, but here in the canyon it's quite lush and wooded. I don't think I'll reach the southern end today, nor the first half of tomorrow for that matter. However, I will reach there tomorrow and begin the trek northwards along the Snake Range spine. For now, nice sheltered canyons. Got a patch of aconitum here, pretty low down, a little above 8,000 feet, but in a wet meadow, hence why they can grow so low. Monkshood, Aconitum columbianum. Here's the namesake hood, hence the common name. Numerous stamens inside of there. Southern part of the range is indeed wetter. Not that much more so, but good enough for some displays, even though Mount Moriah has the clouds at the moment. None of that up here. So lots of Eriogonum umbulatum. Lots of lupinus, lots of penstemon, lots of castellea. Wouldn't call it a super bloom, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we were seeing up north. Some Hypomopsis back there. Eriogonum umbulatum is copiously flowering here. It's good to see. It's more like the July we all know and love out west. Walking through the sagebrush steppe. Probably the most full of life area I've been to yet on this trip. There's insects, flying pollinators everywhere. There's lots of bird life, lots still in flower, including Deciphora fruticosa right here. Widespread species like high elevations of Asia as well. Popularly cultivated in places like Colorado. Very common there, but not common here. There's a big patch of it flowering here all of a sudden. Bunch of turkeys running away. Sorry I didn't get them sooner. They're intrigued. So I need to go that way in a matter of hours. The nice trails and roads and such will have run out for me, and I need to make a decision whether to stay high or go low. I think there are more roads and whatnot lower down, whereas it's all cross country higher up, I believe. Continuing to weave over ridges and now around drainage forks. The drainage in front of me gonna go down and then up where it meets its sister drainage in that direction. And there should be a system of roads and or obscure paths that'll actually get me basically directly to my resupply point. So I probably have figured this one out, hopefully. Almost at the south end of the range, but have one more night before I reach there. It's gonna be up this drainage. I was getting worried about water because after being spoiled earlier in the day with cold clear streams. Last two drainages were dry, except there's a clear pool there with something living in it. It's enough for me. Remember my shoe that was coming apart? This is how I'm keeping it together. Just one low divide crossing after this one ahead, and I'll be at the southern range tip at the resupply point, which was so much trouble to get to. But from that point I'll be rising northwards into the main Snake Range along the main Snake Crest. Whew. It's warm in this ponderosa forest. This trail is only lightly marked as such on the GPS. Is basically unmapped on all other maps. Unmarked. So bring to bear all the resources you can. Make your life easier out here. If I hadn't seen this network on the GPS, I'd be struggling cross country somewhere, I believe. And it wouldn't be very fun, and it wouldn't be very expedient. Just over the last divide of the range for me. Now I'm descending down a couple forks to where my resupply point is, then I'll be walking up that way. It's another bluebird day in Nevada. Unfortunately, it's a little too bluebird. There should be bright fields of Balsamorrhiza in bloom here, and they're not. They are toast. Probably just photosynthesizing a little bit this year and putting it away for next year, I guess. It's also too bluebird in the sense that there's a heck ton of haze to the south. I can barely see the next range southwards, so there's some kind of wildfire situation. Going 2 more miles down this drainage, then taking a V-turn to the north and topping out on ridge lines for most of the rest of the trek ahead. It's 4.5 days in. Gonna try to make it back within 4.5 days, and maybe quicker actually, without all the zigzagging east and west. We'll see.